What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Bituation Room podcast stream situation. So glad to have you here. Thank you for being here another week in Hell World. It's hot. We have a great show today. Someone who possibly has thoughts on how to get out of Hell World. Malcolm Harris is going to be joining us in just a little bit. Malcolm Harris is the author of a new book called What's Left? 3 Paths Through the Planetary Crisis. He's also the author of Palo Alto and other books. So I'm really excited. We're talking communism as a way out of the planetary crisis. And what that definition is, I'm excited to dig into it. It's great. What's wrong or right with market-based solutions to climate change? There's a lot to talk about, and everyone needs to read this book. So really excited to have him on. But first, comedian and writer Mike Drucker is back. It's been way too long. He is back. He also has a new book all about video games. And I also knowing how he writes, cannot recommend this more highly. So really excited to dig into all the not fun things like playing video games, the budget bill, 5 years since George Floyd was murdered, and all of the changes that haven't taken place. We're going to get into it. So sit tight, relax, unwind, take off your socks. I don't know. I'm a barefoot around my house kind of gal. It's like the whitest part of me, perhaps. Just like I don't care. I don't need to wear slippers. I'm just gonna be a dirty ass foot hoe. You know what I mean? The point is we've got a good show. Thank you guys so much for being here. Like and share the stream if you are here. Make sure that you are giving this podcast 5 stars wherever you get your podcasts. Let us know what you like about the show. What guests you liked. What guests you didn't like. You don't need to say nothing. Just keep that to yourself. Here's the point. This is actually only a third of the show. On Friday, we had 2 other guests. One of them was our producer, Paige Omek, and we talked all about Trump's meme coin dinner, if you missed that. And Tracy Fight Love, who is a lawyer and is part of an organization called Lawyers for Good Government. She was excellent, sort of broke down birthright citizenship and the attempts to rescind it. So if you missed that, go back and listen, go back and watch. Also, every Wednesday, we have a bonus episode, and you get that by becoming a patron. Patreon.com/Bituation is where you go. This is my personal preference, y'all. A lot of other platforms are deplatforming people, right? Fellow creators, and they also take a massive cut. Look, if you're a member on YouTube, hell yeah, not going to knock you for that. Twitch, what's up? Not going to knock you for that. Patreon seems to be one of the less censorious, although I do believe they draw the line at white supremacy, so that's a good thing. And they do give a better cut, and you get more perks. So patreon.com/Bituation, you get access to the Wednesday episode. We dug deep into the arrest of Congresswoman Monica McIver of New Jersey, if you remember that story. We also dug into Bernie Sanders on Andrew Schultz's Flagrant podcast. I didn't think it was good. I'm just going to say I wasn't a fan of it. I thought it could have been better, but again, maybe it wasn't for me. So get at that. And thank you guys so much for those of you who are patrons. And remember, we got a lot of live shows coming up, okay? We have a live show this Friday. We're doing it again, live Bituation Room in Los Angeles for the first time in LA. And we're getting council member Eunices Hernandez, John Idarola of the Damage Report, Rachel Reyes of the LA Podcast, Matt Lieb of My Household, and the Bad Hasbara Podcast. Also, someone from the Rent Brigade, Denton Cohen, who here has been blowing the whistle on all the price gougers, as well as an opening comedy routine by the lovely Pallavi Gunalan, who's been on this show. It's just going to be a great night. It will be available after the fact as an audio listen, but you know what? There's nothing like being in the room. So I look forward to throwing down with y'all. If you can make it, or if you have friends in LA, tell them to come out. I'm waiting for all of the trucks to stop honking outside of my house. It's going to be so good. Also, I have a live show on July 5th at the Ice House in Pasadena. Make sure you're getting tickets for that. That's a Saturday, actually. We've got a Saturday. And there are 2 dates, August 1st and 2nd, y'all. We're doing it live in Seattle. Tickets are not on sale yet, but just so you know, August 1st and 2nd. First is at Laughs Comedy Club. Second is a live Bituation Room at the Rainier Arts Center. So holler at us. Tickets are going to go on sale very, very soon. But if you're in the Pacific Northwest, it's going to be a lovely time. It's going to be so good. And with that, guys, let's get into it. This is, once again, kind of a perennial thing that I am bitching about, and I'm sure you're bitching about as well. This is, what are you bitching about? So I have to talk about Gaza because it seems like an abdication of responsibility not to, and also I have eyes. And this week we've just been struck with so much heinous news. Setting aside the fact that, Steve Witkoff allegedly is organizing, some ceasefire with Hamas, Israel's still like on the know of all that. Like, as long as Israel's not involved, it's like none of this means anything. But this week, just in the last few days, we've seen some of the most horrendous images I think we've seen. And kind of, one of the ones that are so emblematic, that are burned into your memory. And also, we know that basically Israel, as I last mentioned when I was bitching about this, the only people who are left in Gaza, I think I put it then, are children and heroes. And that's sort of who is being targeted. And so 2 Red Cross workers were deliberately killed in their homes in Gaza. Red Cross workers. They weren't even out. Usually Israel likes to kill emergency aid workers when they're like actually trying to save someone. No. In their homes. And then the children of a pediatrician who was on the job, who was working to save other children's lives and other people's lives. 9 of her 10 kids were killed. The 10th survived, was injured. There are images of her holding her 9 children in body bags. Then there is an 11-year-old, an 11-year-old named Yakin Hamad, who was an influencer, which is sort of feels like a weird way to reference her, but she did online content and tried to spread joy. She said, quote, bring a bit of joy to the other children so that they can forget the war. She was killed I believe in her home, Yakin Hamad. And then a 5-year-old whose name is Ward, who actually was this girl. If you have seen this image, it is the silhouette of a young girl escaping the flames of a strike that happened on her school. Remember early on in the genocide when they were like, oh no, we don't target hospitals. Are you kidding me? We don't target schools. Don't look back. Don't look at all the schools and hospitals we have targeted in the past. So there she is. She's rushing to, look around for things and survivors. Again, she survived. She's 5 years old. And now we are seeing images of the limited humanitarian aid that's been let in by the grace of Israel. And it's a new group called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Yee. And it's meant to run a new, tightly controlled mechanism for aid deliveries into Gaza. Remember, they don't like the UN. Israel doesn't like the UN. The US doesn't like the UN. We're going to circumvent them. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation's founder, the head of it, just resigned. Maybe in part because there are images coming out of Palestinians corralled in Gaza in barbed wire, waiting in line under the sun for hours after they walked miles to get there to get a limited amount of food that will only last them for like a day. It is like, it's not a good image. So look, I say all this to name that this is what is happening, to name that this is what so many still choose to ignore, to name that this is what so many people wish will go away, even and especially Democrats who think that they don't have to actually address this, talk about it, or as I said yesterday, and as what I'm going to tell you all to do, is the least your senator or representative can do, or anyone who claims to represent you, is to not accept any Israeli lobby money. That's it. It's the least they can do, which is nothing. And of course, we want them to do more, but they must renounce what is effectively blood money. In any other circumstance, any politician would have to renounce any Israel money that they received to, launder occupation, launder genocide. But they're not. And so this is the bar. The bar is low, but I'm urging everyone to make a call to urge your senators, your representatives to not accept this. Tell them about the 11-year-old. Tell them about the 5-year-old. Tell them about the pediatrician whose 9 children were killed. Pick a story, right? Turn this despair into action. And again, it's so much more than calls. I believe if you are in a union, there's a training that's happening in the next few days, and I'll get more information about it, where you can train your labor union and figure out how you all can withdraw your own dues or labor from any kind of weapon sales that happen to be, or any kind of machinery that is going to Israel and going to this genocide. Labor also has huge amounts of power. We talked about that when we talked about the Starbucks Workers United, and how actually the boycott calls for Starbucks invigorated the labor struggle for the union. So again, don't think these are separate, and don't think that anyone worth their salt, even pundits, cannot talk about this stuff. You see Midas Touch rising to the top. That's great. Good for them. I'm glad that they beat out Joe Rogan. But you could argue that Joe Rogan might be talking more about Israel and Gaza than Midas Touch. Horrible politics, not endorsing them. But there is sort of there's again a progressive until Palestine rule that in an anti-Trump era seems to come down and silence a lot of people who need to be saying otherwise. Anyway, I want to let you know that the other night, when you have a hot nightmare, not like a hot, like it's hot, you know what I mean? That's not sexy. It was just I was hot. I wish it was a hot nightmare, which would be a weird kink. The point is, I had a bad dream because it was too hot. Couldn't get back to sleep. I was like, damn it. But luckily, I had my Sunset Lake CBD good night gummies. And man, oh man, within half an hour, your girl was fast asleep with CBD, CBN, and one little THC. And it was, or 1 milligram of it. And it was so lovely. Mind, body just going. I was just able to get back to sleep, and I got maybe 6 hours, 7 hours. Pretty good night for me. Look, if you too have hot nightmares, sunsetlakecbd.com, get 20% off your entire order with coupon code FRANTIFA, FRANTIFA. We're talking the gummies, like I mentioned, the tinctures. We're talking smokables. We're talking salves for your aching bones and muscles. We are talking about coffee and chocolate and all the good things. And new products get rolled out all the time. There's such a great organization, company, vertically integrated, regeneratively farmed. This is good stuff, Vermont based, so it's good. I don't know why, but everything seems clean up there. SunsetLakeCBD.com. Thank you for being a sponsor of the Bituation Room. And with that, let me bring him in. He is a writer for TV, which is a thing that used to exist. No, I'm kidding. He's a writer for TV, video games, and comics, as well as a stand-up comedian. And he's the author of a book that is out right now called Good Game, No Rematch, A Life Made of Video Games. Please welcome Mike Drucker.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello. I love that you have a book that has nothing to do with... No, but really though, we need your book. We need to take our minds off of everything. We need some summer reading.
Yeah. I mean, also, I pitched it 2 years ago, and not in a selfish way, but definitely when things started to go bad, I was like, oh, I'm going to have to promote this during the worst time. I'm going to look like such a jackass.
Yeah,
being y'all remember games? If you're the news, y'all remember Super Nintendo? Like, it definitely felt like a piece of crap, but it was really fun to make, and people seem to like it. So
That's awesome. Are you touring with it?
I did a little bit of a tour. I did New York, some stuff in Los Angeles, and I actually did some stuff in my hometown, Barnes and Noble, just because it felt like, like it kind of felt like a nice way to bring my life full circle to do a book event in the Barnes and Noble that I like spent just hours and hours in as a kid.
It's still there.
Yeah, it's still there. It's still there. It's like smaller, like they cut it in half, but that doesn't matter.
It's all
still
gifts.
very cool. And it was also the only way to get my parents to come to a book event, because my parents
true.
hate traveling.
Right. Well, that's very sweet. I love that you're like, well, mom and dad, they're like not even in the front row. They're like meandering in the back. Mike, thank you for being back here. I feel like it's been so long, so I'm glad you actually, wrote a book, got it sold. Everyone buy it. And what are you bitching about this May 27th?
Well, I was gonna say Hot Nightmares, but I'm gonna do no, I actually, it's this ongoing thing about like men not being respected enough, and Democrats are putting money into learning how to appeal to men. And it's just, this thing is like, and I'm not saying this like I'm different than other boys. Like, that's not what I'm saying. I definitely have, problematic things that are baked into the system and how I was raised. But at the same time, it feels like such horseshit. Like, it's such like it honestly to me feels like, like a guy or a dad was watching like the Barbie movie, and a character goes, "Uh-oh, white men," and he was like, "Ah!" Like, and decided like that was it for him. Like it feels like,
Barbie movie didn't even do white men. Like, I don't even think it mentioned.
It had like one man. It had like when the daughter replies to the dad at one point that like something about like learning Spanish is racist, or like you're like mansplaining something. But regardless, like, I feel like it's like a sitcom joke, or like it's, something you see in like advice columns where someone's like, "Ugh, I hate men." And
it's like a Cosmo, like they're doing a Cosmo, like 20 ways to relate to your red-pilled hubby, like 20 ways to make him think you're trad calf, but you're, actually make decisions in your household. You budget everything. Like 20 ways to fake like you have less power than you do. Like, that feels what the Democratic Party is doing right now.
It really is. And it's fucking ridiculous, just because like, one, just even going off of what you were talking about before I jumped into the room, I'm doing fine. Even my worst day is better than the best day of a lot of people right now in other parts of the world, especially Gaza. And, it's this sense of like, well, the Democrats need to like come around, and when they say find their Joe Rogan, they don't mean find an influencer who's good at convincing people of things. They really just want to get like, they think that somehow they can flip a switch and get like dude bros to suddenly, vote for left-wing policies without explaining them. Like, just like a guy who's appealing. And it's super fucking frustrating, because it feels like this giant cultural wedge issue that just doesn't exist outside of, it feels like more men are being told that people are saying that they're bad by other men than they are being told that they're bad. Yeah. Like, I feel like I fucking hear more podcasters say everyone hates men now than I actually hear people say I hate all men now.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's all imagined. I mean, we're going to talk about the backlash to the George Floyd, movement moment. And Black Lives Matter more broadly, but we are living in a massive backlash to the Me Too moment. And I don't feel like there's like, sort of online analysis and literacy about that, but not in a mainstream cultural way, like a very clear understanding of what backlash is and what that looks like. Here's my thing. Want to bet the 50 million the Democratic Party is using to find the next Joe Rogan? Want to bet that goes to Joe Rogan?
Probably.
Yeah. Don't you feel like they're just like, Well, okay, we're gonna do what we do best. We're just gonna own goal it, and let's hope it turns out. And eventually, he'll come around. Well, Kamala will do the
Absolutely.
interview now. Yeah,
God.
I don't know how they're doing this. And again, I talked about this with Wajahat Ali the other day on his Substack. But basically, like the idea that you're gonna spend all this money to go find somebody is like antithetical to the reason that, whether or not we agree with them or not, why people like folks like Rogan or,
Right.
Theo Vaughn or whatever. It's like it feels organic. Whether or not it is, is a different question. But it's like this is not someone who's the party line doesn't come down. They can say things like, "Hey, Gaza seems bad," and they don't lose their funding over it.
Right.
But overall, they're still going to show up to like Trump's inauguration. They're still going to kind of like bro down with the MAGA right.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing you always hear about. Like, I don't fucking listen to Joe Rogan just because he doesn't talk enough about video games. But but I think like, the thing is when I talk to like other guys who do like him, they'll be like, it's like hanging out with my friends. And I
Right.
feel like that is the secret sauce to that the Democratic Party. And when I say Democratic Party, I really mean, officials and advisors. I don't mean, I think sometimes there's this weird Jake Tapper thing where any Democratic voter becomes the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
And I don't mean Democratic voters who are sometimes just stuck with what they got. But it's harder to be like, he's just like my friends if the person starts off by being funded by a political party.
Right.
It's hard to be like, it's like hanging out with my buddies. My buddy that has been paid $10 million by Obama. You're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It feels like, a problem that the Democratic Party, I feel like, keeps hitting is almost, what's the word I'm looking for? This sense of like being
Fakeness?
Real people.
Yeah,
Authenticity.
exactly. Totally. It's totally an authenticity problem. And again, it's an unspoken slap in the face to let's just call it, to the people of color, the queer people, the women who always stand with the Democratic Party, and specifically Black women who overwhelmingly vote Democrat and have not shaken from that. And let's sort of put Kamala Harris's identity aside. They are like, the code for we need our Rogan is we need a straight white guy who is going to just tell it like it is and be offensive. And, you can deal with that. And it's just like, okay, but there's so many of those.
Right.
Do you really want that? What I was saying is like, if you really wanted a Joe Rogan of the left, like you need like a radical Black Marxist, like queer woman of color or queer woman who's like, abolish all borders. Like if you really want to fund somebody, you should fund someone like that. Someone who's got like some like out there ideas, but who makes a lot of sense, So, that would be actually finding your version of that. It's just like saying whatever the hell you want, like, yeah, borders suck. Abolish them all.
Right.
Yeah, I believe in amnesty for 11 million people right now. That kind of stuff. That's what we need.
I absolutely agree. We don't just need like here's a Democrat that also goes to UFC events. Like it's
Exactly.
like we don't need the same exact thing, and it's not going to get his demographic to just jump on board once there's like another guy with muscles saying, be sure to, I don't know, whatever centrists are saying right now.
Yes. Be sure to watch for your wokeness.
Oh my God, yeah.
All right, we got to get into the week, but first, a new segment since you've been on and since Donald Trump was somehow made his way back into the most cursed building in the world, the Oval Office. Here is Orange Man Bad. Oh, wait. Let me start that over because I wasn't. Oh, now I'm. Let's start it over. Here we go. Okay. This week in Orange Man Bad, the Deputy Director of the FBI, Dan Bongino, is reopening a cold case surrounding the baggie of cocaine found in the White House during Joe Biden's presidency. And here's my thing, dude. Like, You can't spend years complaining that Joe Biden is sleepy and out of it, and then also complain about a bag of cocaine inside the administration. Like, at least someone was trying, you know? Someone had the right idea. In this week, Orange Man also wants to incentivize childbearing by making it illegal not to have them, but also possibly giving new parents $1,000 for every baby born, which is amazing. That's enough money to cover 1/3 of the birth if you have insurance. Without insurance, 1/14 of the birth, guys. Average costs of vaginal births in this country is about $14,000. That's right. C-sections are 30. That is definitely worth not having healthcare for. Just $1,000. There you go. Moving on, as we all predicted, an E. coli outbreak has sickened over 80 people stemming from romaine lettuce. And it sickened 80 people probably because no one was warned about it. I'm sure many people could have avoided getting sick, but the FDA never issued a communication about it because, of course, they didn't. RFK has had E. coli like 29 times. And he's still alive. Shit, he beat it. Look, guys, the brain worm is calling the shots now, okay? It's just on all of us to stop eating salad. I literally, Mike, sometimes I look at, the bag. I look at the bagged lettuces and I'm like, which one doesn't have romaine? And that's the one that I want. It's so fucked up. Yeah, I know I don't get my lettuce at some fucking farmer's market. Sorry, I don't always have the time or the money. And finally, Trump says reshoring manufacturing should not include textiles and other things that are soft, but military equipment and things that are hard. To which I ask, okay, well, what about t-shirts that go hard? Like the one that says, like, I don't have a drinking problem. I drink, I get drunk, I fall down, no problem. Like, that has to be made in the United States. Come on now. Going hard. There are so many worse than that. Anyway, that has been Orange Man Bad. Thank you so much. We'll just ride out. Lou, indeed. Mike, let's do it. Let's get into it. So many things happened this week, but only 2 in my book. This is the week where. So this is the week after Congress passed the big, beautiful budget bill. I don't know how many B's.
By the way, I hate that term.
Dude, you know what's amazing about that term? Number one, I didn't realize it was supposed to be clowning on like Biden's Build Back Better. Like
I didn't realize that either. I thought it was just something Trump said.
Yeah. Well, yes, but like truly it is what the media is using to talk about this bill.
Christ.
Like that's the word. I mean, I think a lot of them are using quotations, but like it's like the big beautiful bill. Oh yeah, the big beautiful bill. Big beautiful bill. Bad bill, butch, blonde, beach. What is it? Beach bill. Yeah, some people are calling it the MAGA murder bill. I like that. It passed, if you remember, 214 to 215. R.I.P. Jerry Connolly, who could have made the difference, maybe. It cuts $880 billion from Medicaid, although, of course, Mike Johnson said, no. It just cuts the people who don't deserve to be on Medicaid and are, robbing us. And it's like, okay.
By the way, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Going back to our earlier conversation, I love that they keep saying able-bodied men. Like we're the only people we're cutting out of Medicaid are able-bodied men. Everything else is there's a war on men. There's a war on masculinity. But whenever they want to cut shit, it's always like, well, it's just men who could work but aren't.
Well, that's how they think they're going to cure you of like these thoughts of like, self-reflection and empathy by removing your healthcare.
Yeah, exactly.
So we'll see. And of course, obviously the richies get a tax break if you make more than, I think, $3.5 million a year. You get a big old tax break. I'm not sure if it's, I'm trying to find out. I think it makes them permanent or a very long, like for the next 10 years, it's a tax
good.
breaks.
Finally.
Yeah.
Love that.
Also, if you have a
Love.
tanning bed, you get a little bit of a tax break. And
Here's the thing is, we're at a point where I don't know if you're joking or not. Like, I genuinely, we live in a world
no,
where if you were like, yeah, there's like certain things like tanning beds, and I'll be like, okay, yeah, sure, fuck it. That's in there, I'm sure.
I mean, that's why like writing topical jokes or anything satirical is like, why the fuck
So
would you
hard.
do it? Because yes, there is a tax break for tanning beds. And here's the thing. It moves now to the Senate, and the Senate is a little shakier on it, although I feel like this is all just one big wind up to passing something awful. But Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, Rand Paul of Kentucky, and Josh Hawley are these three holdouts. And again, this is filibuster proof because it's all through the budget. None of it should be done through the budget, but it is. And especially when it comes to like rescinding healthcare for people, how the fuck is that budgetary? But again, they're trying to say it's budgetary, even though, again, the amount of money it costs when people don't have their healthcare is far greater. But Ron Johnson and Rand Paul hate this bill because it adds $4 trillion or $5 trillion or something like this to the deficit, which is already at 137. And they're trying to be consistent, which good on them. Here's Rand Paul.
Somebody has to stand up and yell, the emperor has no clothes, and everybody's falling in lockstep on this. Pass the big, beautiful bill. Don't question anything. Well, conservatives do need to stand up and have their voice heard. This is a problem we've been facing for decades now, and if we don't stand up on it, I really fear the direction the country is going.
Oh, yeah, you fear it now. Now,
So scary.
He doesn't fear it because of like everything else. He's just like, but the deficit.
Which also fucking tax the rich people. Like I don't mean to give you a magic fucking solution, but don't give them a giant tax break. Like it's almost like what makes me so mad about those, like the senators saying that stuff, is they never go to step 2 of that, which is let's remove the massive tax break. Because that will add to the deficit. Let's stop firing IRS workers who go after rich people.
Exactly. 100%. Like the amount of money, like the internal revenue, like it makes money. It's the Internal Revenue Service. It's the only part of the government that is making money because it's collecting money from us. And because they're part of the, I don't know if it's the top 1%, but like the top 10% for sure. There's some new reporting out from the American Prospect that basically shows that I think six or seven Republican Congress people who decided to gut Medicaid and vote yes on this bill saw that they actually personally would make a bunch of money from it. And so that's why they did it. They were like, yeah, okay, that's easy. But yeah, so Rand Paul, it's very easy why and how we're adding to the deficit. It's everything that your party has stood for a very long time. Here's Ron Johnson sort of echoing that.
I couldn't care less if he's upset. I'm concerned about my children, my grandchildren, and the fact that we are stealing from them. We are stealing from our children and grandchildren. $37 trillion in debt, and we're going to add to it as Republicans? That is unacceptable. And that's why there's no way I'm going to vote for this bill in its current form.
Okay, so
it's going to be like a Brady Bunch transition where like there's a slide whistle and he's like, I'm voting for the bill now.
I've had I consulted with my family and we prayed on it, and we mostly prayed for money. And then we were like, ooh, look, this happens to give us more of that. And so I'm going to be voting yes. But yeah, there's two parts of this I think that are interesting. One is sort of, yes, the fake croc tears for, the deficit. But then there's the, which I might have misstated as 137. It might just be 37 trillion. 137 trillion feels like a lot, even for me. But the other part that both you saw Rand Paul and Ron Johnson do is step to Trump. The emperor has no clothes on. I don't care if he's upset. That's interesting. Now, it seems like both of them are not up for re-election until 2028, so they feel comfortable doing that. And I would argue even if they weren't up until then, now is actually probably when there is more political bandwidth to throw Trump under the bus. I mean, shit, who knows how bad things can get. But you know what I mean? Like the Elon stuff is still fresh, and Elon's money can't actually, sway elections, at least proven by the Wisconsin, judicial vote. But what do you make of that? Like the fact that they're like, they feel comfortable saying that.
Well, I think a huge part of it is like you're saying they're not up for re-election for a while. But I also think you're right. It's sort of like one of those things where if they get the changes they want, they could just be like, we were just negotiating hard. And also if, Trump, flies a Zeppelin into Mount Rushmore, they can be like, see, I was criticizing him all along. Like, I feel like it's like when you play both sides.
Well, it'll be the Qatari jet.
Yeah, it'll be a $200 million jet. Like, it's just like, but they're gonna like, I think they know that they can kind of play both sides. They can be like, I'm a tough, upstanding Republican, and then give Trump basically whatever he wants. I mean, even
Sure.
Trump has said, I'm sure some of the changes the Senate will make are things I want. He didn't phrase it that coherently, but that's what he said.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, this, I don't know, it feels like professional wrestling almost. Like the way a lot of Republican stuff do, where it's a lot of like chest thumping, and then, almost the way those 5 or 6 or 7 Republicans who weren't going to vote for the budget were until like they raised like the salt cap by like $8, and they were like, yep, I'm going to hit the button. We're all good now. It just feels like professional wrestling to tell your voters, especially like voters who might be purpley or maybe, on the fence, just to be like, see, I'm tough on Trump when I need to be, but also give him everything he wants.
Yeah, absolutely. And also I think it's part of like the veneer of still having a government.
Yeah.
You're like, this is not a hostile government takeover. This is not authoritarianism. I still have the power of the purse. And I'm, when ultimately I do think they're going to throw down with this massive tax break. And the fact that they don't care about Medicaid, and I will shout out that like Josh Hawley, is a psycho-Christian nationalist freak, but he, wrote an op-ed in the New York Times that was like, we need to not cut Medicaid. This is political suicide. And he may be handsomely rewarded by like maintaining his seat because of it. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe he sees some writing on the wall. I mean, shit, the writing on the wall we all see. But here's Speaker Johnson, which I just have to play this because it's so funny. He's responding to Ron Johnson because Speaker Johnson's like, we did our job. I gave you the votes. Can you give me yours? What are you doing now? And it's going to go to committee. They're going to like rehash it. They might create a whole new bill, but take a listen.
We've got to turn this aircraft carrier. You don't turn an aircraft carrier on a dime. It takes a mile of open ocean to do it. And it took us decades to get in this financial situation. We can't just flip a switch and get out of it overnight. One of the people that my friend Ron Johnson really respects is Russ Vought, who directs the Office of Management and Budget. And Russ is a big champion for this piece of legislation. He calls it historic. And he's a fiscal hawk, and so am I. So we're doing as much as we can.
What am I supposed to go cold turkey on the debt? Are you kidding me?
Come on, man. Just one more hit of debt. Just one more hit.
Just one more hit. What's it going to hurt?
And they can't even confess that they don't fucking care about the debt. Like, they have to, like, pretend they do while still, like, blowing it up far more than any Democratic president does.
Well, my favorite about that is he's shouting out Russ Vought, who is the guy who's the head of Office of Management and Budget, who is part of Project 2025, who I think he was the one who said we want to put federal workers in trauma.
Yeah.
And so Mike Johnson doesn't think this is like, it doesn't look like the W that he's making it look like. Like even Russ Vought is for it, and he's a fiscal hawk. No, Russ Vought and fiscal hawkishness in general is a fallacy. It's a lie. It's just some
1,000.
shit you say. But when you want the tax break, when your corporate buddies want it, you can find all the money in the world. So like you basically are just hypocrites. So own that. I think it's really funny that he's like, well, Russ Vought likes it. And it's like, no, buddy, this is what Russ Vought was like, primed to do.
Also, I don't think, like, I know that Russ Vought is a powerful figure. I don't think that he's a very popular or super well-known figure. Like, even to Fox News viewers, I don't imagine them being like, Russ Vought likes it, then I'm all good. Like, yeah. I think that they're like, wait, who's that guy that looks like David Cross? Like, they don't know.
Wow, that's so mean. That was CNN, but yes, of course. I mean, Fox News is not even asking them that question. Like, they don't care. They're like, does it have a stipulation about taking down pride flags? Okay, good.
Yeah, that's all I want is one trans girl to not being able to play soccer and feel bad. You could take away my health care as long as, a handful of trans children hate their lives.
Yep. Mm-mm-mm.
Finally.
Let's move on because it is, it is important to mark this, every Memorial Day, in addition to thinking about the pointless wars for oil and treasure that we have sent, hundreds of thousands of people into battle to die over millions. Um, Memorial Day also reminds us of the Black Lives Matter uprising around the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis. It's been 5 years, and it's important to know, like, this was the largest protest in American history. I think it was something like 70% of Americans. It was well over half of Americans had attended a rally. And yet, 5 years on, let's take stock. And, like, this is according to the liberal rag, the New York Times, who did some of this reporting. But police killings are in fact up. They are up, especially for Native American and Black Americans. And, like, I want to just name like the 100,000 per 100,000 people since 2015. 6.8% if you're Native, 6.7% if you're Black, 2.9 if you're Hispanic, 2.5 if you're white, Asian. And, like, I do think, like, I know people like to get down on, like, language like BIPOC, in terms of like Black, Indigenous, people of color, but, like, you just see the stats of the amount of, like, police killing of Native Americans and Black Americans, and you're like, yeah, but BIPOC is a very useful term, considering that, like, Asians are like 1%, whatever. I'm just putting that out there. But you see the amount of police killings. This is another graph.
Oh, geez.
So it tracks basically homicides and then police killings. Police killings have been steadily going up, and since 2020, like, almost precipitously, where homicides have been precipitously declining since the death of George Floyd, which, of course, our entire media fearmongers completely the opposite.
Oh, 1000%. I mean, especially, like, I live in New York City, and it feels like every news story about New York City is like, or even seeing, like, Sean Duffy being like, the subway's the most terrifying place in the world. You walk on there, especially if you're a woman, you will get murdered. And it's like, not really. Like, I write it every day. Half the time I'm like high or drunk and no one touches me. Like, it's fine. It's totally safe. But you're absolutely right. If you watch the news and you don't live in a big city, you probably think that it's like the 1970s of crime in those cities.
Well, and this is, I think, the biggest story 5 years on, because it really is the backlash to this, the backlash to the narrative around, hey, cops are totally buck wild. They're out of control. They disproportionately murder Black Americans. Stop the killing. They are they do so with complete impunity. Rarely are they held accountable. Derek Chauvin's case was an outlier, and 5 years later, right-wingers and Dean Cain are openly saying that George Floyd died of an overdose. Like you didn't watch a video of him being fucking strangled by a knee for 9 minutes? Or
even the coroner's report. If you don't trust the video, the coroner, who, coroners don't always not protect the police,
Totally. I mean, the evidence was so overwhelming. And so, but again, that is the backlash moment. And it is really the work of, I think, the right-wing echo chamber that has brought us to this moment, despite, and I want to talk about that, but let me just get through some of these other stats. Let's see. Last year, 16 officers were charged with either murder or manslaughter in a fatal shooting, the same number as in 2020. So again, very little has progressed or changed on this front. Red state versus blue state is very interesting. So the rate of police killings in red states has gone up, and the rate of police killings in blue states has gone down by a little bit. In Republican-leaning states, they've risen by 23%. But broadly, in terms of support of BLM, it's actually not dropped that much. 52% still of Americans still express support of Black Lives Matter, which is a drop of 15%, which is obviously huge, but still that is the majority. And 72%, and this is according to Pew, say that increased focus on race and racial inequality after Floyd's killing did not lead to changes that improve the lives of Black people. Yes, and of course the evidence bears that out. And a majority of Americans say the relationship between Black people and the police hasn't changed. About the same, 54%, 33% say it's worse, and 11% say it's better. I mean, I don't know where they are.
I mean, that 11% it's a very Pollyanna view to be like, I don't know, I haven't seen anything go on.
No, they read like Ibram X. Kendi and were like, well, I did my work, you know? So
things are fine.
Now, it's important to know, look, Biden, I give Biden a lot of crap because he did virtually nothing when it came to this movement that absolutely gave him the White House. It surged while he was running. It was a clear difference between him and Trump. He gave a lot of lip service to it. They weren't shy about it, like they were incredibly shy to stand with the people of Palestine and against genocide that they were part of. The point is this. He did sign an executive order that restricted no-knock warrants, banned chokeholds, and created a national law enforcement for accountability. That's just a database of like any misconduct. All of those things have been overturned by Trump. In fact, Trump in his first term was way better on police accountability. He left in place the consent decrees. So where, federal bodies have to basically oversee, I think something like 24 police forces that were engaged in particular, misconduct, whatnot. He was okay with those in his first term. Now he's rescinded them. And he did take down this database to even track, like, how dare we even track police misconduct? He has this another executive order that even like the Fraternal Order of Police is like, we don't need all that. We still have, we're pretty good. Like, it's basically like, we need to hire more. We need to defend officers if they do, catch a case. Like, we need to punish people who kill cops even more. And it's like, yeah, all that stuff still exists. Like, even advocates for the cops are like, we have enough.
And speaking of deficits and budgets, again, how much money are you going to give police forces if you're not getting better results at all? I mean, it's such a fucking waste that it makes, like, even just monetarily, it makes me mad. Outside of all of the social justice horror,
sure,
even it's like the amount of programs that could keep people from that could raise people out of poverty, that could feed kids. It's so fucking frustrating. I also think, and I know we're almost out of time with me, but it's a lot of people still have this misconception about the Black Lives Matter protests where they're like, they blew up Seattle, they blew up Portland. Like, there are members of my family that do not think Seattle still exists. Like, they don't think it's there. Like, you talk to them and they talk about Seattle as if it's been razed to the ground and the earth has been salted. And you almost can't convince people otherwise. And I think, again, because we were saying, like, the media focuses on the one broken window at a Target, suddenly it becomes, oh, all they did was break things, all they did was burn things. And it's like, no, you saw footage of a trash can on fire and one broken window, and you don't even know who did that.
Yep. I think it's a massive lesson for the media, obviously, on how they treat things like this and how little power they have against the right-wing echo chamber. And again, maybe, a Joe Rogan of the left, sure, but a lot of them, and those who are platforming people who can actually talk about criminal justice reform and police reform. I also think it's a massive lesson to, honestly, the Democratic Party. Look, last thing I'll say, and it's important to know, Kamala Harris co-wrote the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which was already kind of lightweight, right? It passed Congress, passed the House, and it stalled in the Senate, even when Democrats were in power, right? And this had nothing to do with like Kyrsten Sinema's purse strings and Joe Manchin. I don't even know where they stood on this. And who's the president of the Senate? The vice president is the president of the Senate. She was president of the Senate and she couldn't get this across the finish line. And look, maybe she was working tirelessly behind the scenes, as we know she was working on so many other things tirelessly behind the scenes.
Of course.
Something tells me they were not. This was not a priority. They took many people's votes for granted who specifically wanted action on this. And the fact that it is worse and the fact that they did nothing is so horribly telling. And I don't say that out of any joy. I didn't want to fail on this. I say this out of absolute horror and wanting to have fucking better electeds. It's like, so anyway, it's a massive lesson. It's also a lesson for the movement, the BLM movement, which is sort of largely MIA? Again, not completely. Where did that energy go? Did it go into lobbying? Who was holding Kamala's feet to the fire? Mike, it's a massive conversation I could talk about. And I want to have more people on this show to dissect it all. But we've begun the conversation. And my
No, I
God,
think we fixed it. I think we solved it.
I think that's all you need to do is start to talk, and
Yeah.
then it solves itself. Mike Drucker, where can people find you? Where do you suggest they buy your book?
You can buy my book anywhere. It's available digital, hardcover, and audio. I actually read the audiobook. So if you want to hear sort of an
Cute.
audiobook that's read like a stand-up segment, go for it.
Oh my God, yes.
You can get it on Amazon, but if you're avoiding that, independent bookstores, you can ask your library to get a copy. They might have a copy already. And bookshop.org is actually a good place for independent books. You can also buy it there. It makes no difference to me financially where you buy it. You just have to buy it. You must.
Yeah, you must. Yeah. I'm not leaving this stream until you buy it. Mike, thank you so much for being here. Always a pleasure. Come back.
Thank you for having me.
Hell yeah. And thank you guys for being here. We got another guest waiting in the wings. And I will read your comments, and thank you guys so much for any comments and super chats. I'm going to read them at the end. You know how I do. But I can't keep my people waiting. My next guest is a freelance writer and author of What's Left, 3 Paths Through the Planetary Crisis, the book Palo Alto, and others. Please welcome Malcolm Harris.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. I also know that you wrote kind of a takedown piece of Vivek Chibber, and I can't believe I haven't read that.
Yeah, that was like years ago when he published the Class Matrix. It wasn't a takedown; it was a book review. I feel like everything gets characterized as like.
Oh, I'm characterizing it as a takedown. I want to see him
personality
taken down.
conflict.
That's why this is. I have a lot of thoughts that will offline that. That'll be another thing. I'll read it for the patrons. Malcolm, you got a new book. It is called What's Left: 3 Paths Through the Planetary Crisis, and it's great. I love that this feels like a kind of a choose your own adventure for solving climate collapse. And kind of apolitical. I mean, it's very political, but apolitical. And it's like, what is going to be the most expedient and effective way to survival, really, to planetary survival and for, I guess, humans, continuation on this earth. But can you just break down what are the 3 different ways? And then I want to take them one by one.
Yeah, so I talk about 3 paths, 3 strategic paths for progressives through the planetary crisis, which is kind of like the climate crisis, but a little bit bigger and worse and a little harder to figure out. And so they mostly revolve around the relationship between fossil fuels and the market and the value system. And so the first path is something I call market craft. I actually stole it from a political scientist named Stephen Vogel. But I really like the term. I tried to think of like non-triggering titles for the different strategies, and I think I did pretty well for the first 2, which are market craft and public power. So I didn't say like, oh, this is the liberal one and this is the socialist one or whatever, because I don't want people to be like reactive identity-wise. I want them to think through the strategies on their own terms. And then the third strategy is communism. And so I clearly failed on the non-reactive titles, but I couldn't help myself.
Yeah. Well, I love it. And then I kind of just it's kind of ate it.
I tried.
No, but it's good.
I tried to lie to my readers, but I couldn't do it.
Well, I'm excited to talk about specifically communism, but in terms of market craft, well, first of all, you said something just there, which was like, it's not just the climate, it's planetary. Can you tell me what that means?
Yeah, so I use this analytical lens called social metabolism. And so that means not just looking at production, but reproduction, maintenance, repair, all these different ecological cycles that we don't usually think of when we're thinking about economics. And so the climate crisis is too often turned into a sort of numerical question of how much CO2, how many degrees or whatever. And that's wrong. It's just a flat out incorrect way of understanding the crisis itself. And so the planetary crisis I want to get away from this idea of just measuring carbon and, number go up, number go down, understanding of what is a crisis in all of our ecological and social systems, right? At every level, this is a crisis that's affecting us. And it's one crisis at the level of the totality. And the totality for us is the planet in which we live,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you also talk about, and we don't want to have to get into it too much, but yes, the way, like, you don't have to be invested in an oil company or an oil, baron to be sort of propelled or compelled to be part of a very fossil fuel economy, or economy that does a lot of planned obsolescence or relies on petroleum in all different ways. I have a coffee machine that just broke, and it's more expensive to fix it than to buy a new one, you know what I mean? And it's like all this bullshit. It's just like, that kind of bullshit. I mean, this is just me. And also like the perpetual.
Well, it's not just you.
That's just me right now. But yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing you talk about is sort of the perpetual need to create value. Like the repair has to create value for somebody, but the has to create value. And we always, something has to always create value economically or, and definitely not socially. So I love that. I love how much you problematize it. Like, we are entrenched in this, even when you make individual decisions to try to not be.
Absolutely. If we were going to shut down every oil company in the country tomorrow, if the radical leftists won and they say we're going to shut it all down and keep it all on the ground, there would be riots. And there would be riots because people need that oil to drive to their job where they have to make a living in order to feed their family, but also because, retired teachers depend on their pension funds that might be invested in oil companies, right? Or invested in other funds that are invested in oil companies. Yes. And so we're all tied into a system around fossil fuels. It's not just an issue of, some greedy capitalists at the top or some short-sighted politicians. We think of this as a problem with a couple people at the top, but that's not really what's going on. It's a problem of our social metabolism itself. And so any strategy that's even going to be analytically viable, any strategy that has any chance has to address that problem, not the problem of number too high, right? Because you can just say oh, we're going to invent robot trees and the robot trees will make the CO2 in the air go down. And so problem solved. Even though we haven't done that yet, but we'll just eventually do that. And so and that.
No, but I was at a tech conference around the Paris.
Real. Yeah.
Well, I was at the Paris, I was at the Paris Climate Summit years ago, when there was hope or whatever. And when I went to this tech expo to kind of clown on everybody, and one guy was like, our company is called Sky Mining. We basically mine the sky for carbon. And and it's just like, oh my God. They're going to mine the sky for CO2 in order to put back into the fucking atmosphere. What are you talking about? Anyway, market craft, the idea that capitalism can be used as a way to get out of this, and incentive structures, and making it more perhaps appetizing to and profitable to invest in green energy. That is what I understood from market craft, but explain what it is and maybe what's an example of it being tried.
Yeah, market craft, I think it's important to distinguish market craft from market-based solutions that are further to the right or further to the center. I think market craft is still a solidly, or can be a solidly left-wing idea, which is, it starts with the premise that markets are tools that people and societies of people use to accomplish the things that they want to do. Mm-hmm. So markets are not the truth of human nature. It's not some ancient god that we have to appease. It's not the condition for our existence. Markets are tools. And so markets have specific features that are created by policy that people come up with. And so if we want a market that produces decarbonization, we got to create a market that yields decarbonization. And so a metaphor I use in the book is complaining about the outcomes of your markets is sort of complaining about the quality of the cucumber sandwiches at your imaginary tea party that you created. It's if you want a different outcome from the market, you got to create the market differently. And so an example that I write about in the book is the Montreal Protocol that ended the use of chlorofluorocarbons when people realized that they were blowing a hole in the ozone layer. And the United States was actually instrumental in leading that process, because the United States government said, we're not going to use and allow the use of chlorofluorocarbons in our state anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll put them in a position to lead the international effort to stop their use globally, and industry by industry sort of pull the permission slips for using these chemicals as scientists approve alternatives. And that was an example of how you could rig markets and use them as a global tool, not even just a national tool, but as a global tool to yield the kind of outcome that you want. And by creating the rules, by setting the rules that you want, and recognizing that markets are not, private actors don't rule us. We create the conditions for them to operate. We are always creating the stage for private actors to play out.
So you don't see market craft as just, because I imagine it, I mean, what I was reading about it, I was reading the book and I was reading that part, I felt like it felt much more like Inflation Reduction Act, like incentives for moving towards more sustainable, like tax rebates basically for like EVs or, heat pumps, which I really want my landlord to buy.
Right.
And will never happen. But you're saying even just regulations, even just having some regulatory structure on the market, I don't know, is that can also be market craft.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can use like positive market craft. You can use like carrots, right? And say like, well, yeah, we'll give you an incentive to do this. We'll give you tax rebates, the IRA kind of stuff, and even much like further than that.
Mm-hmm.
But you can also use sort of a negative market craft and say like, you can't do this. This is banned, or these are the taxes we're going to put on you for doing this socially deleterious activity, or even be just to slow you down, just to make it easier for other technologies that we think might be socially better to compete. Up to saying like, oh, you can't burn coal for energy anymore.
Yeah.
Or like there's a bill in New York about gas-fired Bitcoin mines, and they said like, look, you just can't do that. You can't use fossil power to power Bitcoin mines. Like that's just too much. And that's market craft. Saying you can't do this is also a form of market craft. But then there's also a third category of just like making sure things work and doing like coordination within the markets. So something like setting the electronic protocols that charging stations are going to use to communicate prices to and availability to cars. Like we don't think about that as something that like needs to be done in order for the electric car system to work until you're driving around your electric car and you're like, well, where can I fill up? How much is it going to cost? Do I need to have some special app to pay? Do I have to like register? Like, that could be, if we let the market just do that without state leadership, then it ends up as some like, terrible internet interface where you have to like subscribe for 4 payments in order to charge your car at the last minute or whatever. Totally possible if it's not coordinated better,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't want to just like, talk China up top, but I kind of want to talk China up top because you specifically use that example of like, in China, when it comes to EV charging stations, it's just like a QR code. It's super accessible. It's easy to learn, to know how to pay. Doesn't have to be a specific app specific to a company, where do you place China in this like market craft, and again, approach, even if China isn't necessarily thinking about stopping planetary collapse, they definitely have a lot of crafting of their market.
Yeah, and I think it's clearly the most advanced in terms of using a climate market craft strategy. China leads the world not just in solar panels and electric vehicles, but also like planting trees, like pump storage hydropower, which I read about as well. So they've created, and I talk about that in the public power section as well, which we can talk about. But I think that's one reason to think of market craft not so much as necessarily a capitalist strategy, because China is the country that is perhaps leading every country in the world, and not perhaps, but definitely leading every country in the world in terms of their market craft strategy. It's really about the use of markets as a tool. And that's the most conservative, the most moderate, the most like already happening strategy that I talk about in the book. But I think ultimately it unfolds to something really radical, which is the socialization of investment, where ultimately you say, we as a society are going to decide what we're going to invest our resources in looking to the future. And that that prerogative doesn't belong to a small slice of capitalists, and they can
Right.
maybe help fund the things they want. They can buy some green bonds, but ultimately, like, the job for deciding where society's investment is going to go does not belong to them. It belongs to the rest of us.
Hmm. Does that lead us to then the second option, the second sort of avenue is like public power? It's more of like a democratic socialist approach. The government run renewable planning projects owned by taxpayers, taking the profit motive out, kind of in the way that we think about universal healthcare and single payer. I mean, I'm someone who believes that the private healthcare industry has lost the right to actually, provide healthcare. So, is it talk about public power? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think it's a lot like what you're talking about, which is not just the democratic socialist solution, but really the socialist solution, right? The socialization of key industries. And so public power is a bit of a pun because I'm talking about the power of the public, specifically public workers who are going to be operating these public things. So if we're talking about, for example, socializing healthcare, that means a lot of people suddenly work for the public now, or are public workers, right? And those are the people who are going to be operating these systems, and they're also the ones who need to be driving this process politically and determining how it happens. And so that means power to the public, power to the working class as the universal class of the public. But it also means public power is in like public operated utilities, right? So the like power company operated by the public, where we can't just leave that up to private actors. And I talk about in the book what a disaster it's been to try and rely on private actors in order to make our power system, and the advantages of public power, both the workers themselves as well as a public power production and distribution system for electricity works.
Where do you see that? Like, what's a good example of where that works better especially when it comes to energy or, like, is it just beyond China maybe?
Well, even in the United States, we have a variety of public power agencies and have for a while. So the one people probably know the most about, maybe especially your viewers maybe know the most about, is the Tennessee Valley Authority, which is a signature program of the New Deal, where FDR said, look, if capital doesn't think it's worthwhile to electrify the South, this, underdeveloped region of the country, which really at that time is underdeveloped, not just like for the United States, but for the world. It's an underdeveloped place in the world. They don't have electricity. And he says, like, look, if we can't rely on these private actors to do it, if they don't see enough in it for them, we'll just do it ourselves. We'll set up a public agency that's backed by the credit of the state, and we'll accomplish the things we need to accomplish. We'll build the infrastructure, we'll build the dams, we'll build the transmission infrastructure, we'll build the nuclear power plants if that's what we decide we need. And we'll make it happen. And those will be built by public workers, run by public workers, maintained by public workers who will be accountable to the public for providing them power, as well as for decarbonizing the system.
These are like massive projects, I mean, I think this is, it's reminding me of Naomi Klein's, This Changes Everything, and her basically saying, climate change and planetary collapse is such a massive existential threat and issue that only with the power of the government can we even hope to try to stand a chance to fight it and stop it. So we have to utilize the money, the mobilizing force, the workforce of the government in order to really have a plan here. And so that's sort of reminding me, I mean, I know she has like a sort of a myriad of solutions. Where would like something like, democratizing the energy grid or the ability to like, plug in through your own solar panel or your own, wind farm or whatever, rather than having to like pay an electrical company for the, even though you're generating your own power, like, does that fall into public power, you think?
I think that would be maybe more of a market craft solution, right? Because then you're relying on people acting as market actors rather than acting as like citizens, which is sort of what the public power strategy asks. So a public power strategy would ask you to say, subscribe to the local utility company, obviously, where, to plug in your stuff into the wall, which is itself plugged into.
Oh, give back right to your neighborhood or community.
Well, and they'll have a solar farm that it won't be reliant on you as an actor, right? Like, that's not your job. Your job is to pay taxes, right? Basically, to support the public energy system, as well as to pay into the public monopoly energy system. Whereas a more market craft solution might say, look, we don't have time for that, or like, in addition to that, we need to incentivize people to do rooftop solar.
Yeah.
Which is I think a distinct strategy from the public power. I think there are ways in which these like overlap, and it's all one big Venn diagram. I think, they're like, and I talk about in the book, the overlaps between these various strategies. But I think of something like distributed rooftop solar as more of a market craft, or even a communist strategy, than a public power one.
Yes, we should say that you don't really come, like, you're saying that there could be a myriad of an amalgamation of these solutions, and maybe their steps and at different times. And so I want to talk about communism in a second, but it's reminding me of, I talk about this because I did reporting 10 years ago in Uruguay about their legalization of marijuana. And they studied all these examples from the United States to Portugal, to the Netherlands. And they kind of had this mixed approach of, we're going to have like government subsidized, marijuana cannabis farms. You're going to register with us. We're going to redirect funds that the government makes, into treatment, into prevention, and in terms of addiction and substance abuse. But we will also allow individuals to have like their own cannabis plants in their homes, up to 30, and you can have like, but you're not allowed to sell it. It's like people can like come and take, and you give something like this. So it was like trying to democratize things, but sort of, again, a mixed approach to what they felt was like the illicit drug market that they wanted to kind of stamp out, that they didn't, that was leading to crime and whatnot. So it's kind of reminding me of this, which is interesting, but we could talk about communism too. Let's when you said the word communism, when I read it, I was like, my mind immediately goes to like, okay, revolution, gotta do rev. Then the new state, does some sort of top-down implementation of, how we're going to survive the fuck out of the next 30 years. But your book doesn't define communism that way, or anything that we've seen in the past. So talk about it.
Yeah, well, I think there are definitely examples of the kind of communism I'm talking about. And in the communist tradition that I'm talking about goes back further than Karl Marx, further, past Jesus, like all the way to antiquity, right? Which is the communal organization of people. So it's not a new idea that I'm advancing, certainly, and not a like brand new kind of communism, but maybe
you're taking communism out of the sort of modern context of how we understand it. It's more like predates like
out of the state communist tradition, because I think a lot of people could read the public power section and then open a section that says communism and say like, wait, I thought we just did that, right? Like the workers take over the institutions and they run them for themselves in society's interest. Like, isn't that communism? And it's like, well, no, that's socialism. That's its own strategy. We need to understand it that way. And communism is the communal organization of people, and what I talk about as the communist invariant of from each according to their abilities, to each according to their needs, and the organization of society.
And how could that be a solution to the planetary crisis, to the collapse here?
Well, the people have organized communally for as long as people have been around. People continue to organize communally now, and they fight for the ability to continue to organize communally. So we see a lot of like conflict between communally organized people who, again, they're like 500 million in the world, which is a lot, right? Communally organized people in conflict with resource extraction on behalf of public power, who say like, look, we need this lithium to build our electric vehicles at our car plants. And communally organized people who disproportionately live near resources, quote unquote, say like, no, look, this is an important element. This territory is an important element in this ecological system that you don't understand, and you're going to fuck it up. And so one of the reasons we can't do this without that kind of knowledge, without the knowledge of like rooted groups of people who are based in particular pieces of land, is that the world is not actually a video game. It's not like a Sim City thing where they're like, you know, oh look, I found a new clump of lithium. Like people really think of it as like video games, like Age of Empires or whatever, right? It's like, look, a gold mine, or like, look, a lithium mine. There's no one else on this map. It's just you know, a system that has like 3 variables, and we need to maximize 2 of them and minimize 1 of them or something. And
Right.
that's not at all how the world works. The world is innumerable overlapping ecological systems that we understand poorly, right? That no one understands as a totality, but like some people understand specific parts of it.
Well,
And
and that's when you talk about, like, you know, obviously indigenous people and the wisdom and the knowledge and the ingenuity of indigeneity, as you write, and you talk about like native value systems, which I think, you know, a lot of awesome, you know, climate justice organizations work with indigenous groups who are specifically in the crosshairs and fighting not just, again, their own, you know, ostensibly like leftist governments or centrist governments against, you know, the erasure of their ecology and their way of life, but also multinational corporations, Shell, BP, whomever. And so I love that. And I think like what I'm also reminded of what I was thinking when I read the book was like that even the impact of climate change itself, like Hurricane Maria on Puerto Rico or Haiti after the earthquake. I mean, earthquake, okay. But like the fact that these disasters are actually pushing, like in Puerto Rico, there's been more of a back to the land movement around food. And Haiti also less so, obviously, because of, you know, whatever horrible repression and whatnot, but like these are places that very much relied on their local food economies and farming and, you know, whatnot, and then got turned into like monocrop and, you know, export processing zones and such. But anyway, like that the impact also is necessitating this back to the land, if you will, or like the native value systems that we've long forgotten. I think this indigenous activist from he was from Montreal, Art Manuel, who I years and years ago worked with, said something like anyone can cut down a whole forest, but like someone who's smart cuts down a third of the forest, regrows it, keeps cutting it down, has that forest forever. Like,
and it's important to know that these are like contemporary societies of people, right? We're not talking about like learning from past societies or whatever. These are groups of people who are every bit as contemporary as capitalist society, and in fact will plan to and will probably outlive capitalist society, right? Like there are indigenous organized, communally organized groups of people who are going to outlive this crisis directed social system. Like that's something we need to understand, and that like we can learn from that process, right? Like the rest of us need to learn from that process, and we can't afford to forsake that knowledge that is present, contemporary knowledge, right? Not like ancient knowledge or like something you fetishized. And so one way I look at this in the book is that like biodiversity is very important, right? That's a key to keeping these ecological cycles going, and that indigenous and communally organized people are much better at maintaining biodiversity than capitalist societies are. That's a like statistical question, right? That's something that the UN has studied extensively of different indigenous people around the world, groups of people, and their stewardship of biodiversity. And like we need to learn how to do that, because it's very important, right? And like we can't help ourselves from killing all the insects, and we don't know why, and we like can't figure out how to stop. And like that's an emergency, right? That's an emergency that we need like a solution from other people who are currently alive to like tell us how to fix this. And so when I talk about communism, I'm talking about people who have this sort of who have developed rooted knowledge over time, because we're dependent on that. And so that's the section that I talk about agroecology and different forms of ecological agriculture production that we're going to need, because this one is in crisis, right? So it's not a question of like, oh, is it realistic to ask people to give up their current way of living? It's like, well, no, it's not, right? People are going to cling to their current way of living, but for better and worse, that they're clinging to something that's on fire,
Yeah.
like they're not going to be able to maintain their existing ways of life regardless. And
Yeah.
so what's realistic is going to change very, very quickly. And so we need to have open mind about what realism really means in a moment of historical crisis.
Well, before we go, I did want to like focus more on the adversaries in all of this.
Sure.
I'm reminded of, I think, what Bill McKibben used to say, and still says, I'm assuming, that, we have to treat the fossil fuel industry like an enemy industry. And when you open the book, kind of explain like that the capitalists making a killing are, no matter what regulations you put on them, they're going to find a way to keep on polluting. They are going to, from their cold dead hands, quite literally from our cold dead hands, they don't give a fuck. And then, added to that, I do notice that, like, in the last 10 years, you've noticed the discussion around climate change from the right being very actually clear-eyed about what this crisis is necessitating. So to the point where they're very black-pilled and nihilistic about climate change. They're like, basically, get it while it's good, hey.
Build higher walls, yeah.
Totally build higher walls, whatever. Make sure there's hot chicks in, your privatized little country or whatever.
Yeah.
And they are... and I always mention this, but in Trump's like transit authority report or something back in 2018, they were like, fuel emission standards don't matter because we're all going to die anyway. Climate change has already made an impact. And so I guess my question also is around the repression and the repression to any change, the fight against any change from these market forces and from fascists who will not get rid of the value. How dare you say we should get rid of value? How dare you say we should organize ourselves communally versus in families, and in top-down patriarchal structures?
Yeah, well, it's a bad situation, right? Like you can look at the situation and say, like, well, the most realistic thing that's going to happen is that fascists are going to win, and we're going to have, a civil war that kills 1 billion people that we lose and are going to live under the climate Reich. And I quote Mike Davis, who has his great statement about realism, the late great Mike Davis, where he says, like, if we're too realistic, we could just turn to stone, right? You can like look into the situation and be so realistic that you can't move.
Yeah.
But like markets, I think realism is a tool that people use to accomplish the things we want to accomplish. And so if your realism doesn't put you in a position to act, to make the world a better place, right, to accomplish what you want to accomplish, or even just to like square up against your enemies, right, to make a good fight, then it's not really serving you, right? Then that's realism that ceases to be a tool and begins to be pathological, right? And a lot of people are suffering from like pathological realism right now, where it's like, it's the most realistic thing you can do is throw up your hands and accept like the end of the earth. And like, well, that doesn't sound very realistic to me, or whatever. Or if that is realism, then that's not a realism that's very useful. And so what I wanted to do with this book is give a real sort of like useful climate realism, which is that, like, look, people are going to be working under these strategies in the important time period that we have, right? We're talking about years, decades, not centuries. And no one strategy out of these three is going to convince everybody that everyone should become a communist, or everyone should give up their communal societies and become market crafting liberals or whatever. And so the question is, in the period of time that we have, how do we fit these together, right? How do we fit these people who are operating under these strategies together like puzzle pieces in order to build a climate movement that can win? Because that's what we have to do. That's our task. And I think it's one we have to assume that we are capable of accomplishing.
Amen. I mean, I could talk to you for so much longer. I do think that people who have, I think in the last, 10 to 20, the climate movement has really, some of the language I really think is right on. I do think things like a just transition, moving away from fossil fuels. That transition, I think, is nice. It makes sense. But also, I think my question is around which one can we afford? Like, which one do we have time to do? Because I love market craft. I'm like, yeah, these fucking capitalists, someone's got to make a buck somewhere. You got to put limits on them. You got to do this and that. But we're also in a time when you do like one regulation and they act like that shit is communism. So I'm like, why don't we just do the communism? You know what I mean? Like, why don't we do the whole thing? I feel like the Inflation Reduction Act was momentous and important, but also kind of proved just how buck wild the forces were up against. Like, they're gonna freak out anyway. So it's like, we might as well go for the whole enchilada.
Well, I think that's what we need, the whole puzzle, right? And so if any one of these puzzle pieces had all the solutions, then they wouldn't be able to like lock together. And we need something that's going to lock together. We need to walk down all three paths at the same time.
Right.
And part of my hope with the book is that I can convince, the market crafting liberals that like, you need us, like you need communists out on the street lighting fires. You need like the crazy anarchists burning American flags. Like you need us as part of your puzzle. Like you don't know what's going to work, and that might work. And you need to make sure that those people are escaping state repression, right? You need to make sure that you're not cutting them off and saying like, oh, don't deal with them, deal with us instead. We're the reasonable ones. Yeah. Because then you'll get eaten, right? They'll eat you alive and you won't have anybody to burn anything in the street for you.
Do you have any lingering catty thoughts about the abundance agenda as someone like Ezra Klein is making these rounds and saying, that I guess the market craft of some of Biden's policies are the reason that actually we can't get more climate stuff done?
I wish it was less catty, right? I wish we were talking more about like how these systems operate. I think like they don't take capitalism itself seriously as a specific historical system. They're thinking about, the challenges of human collective action in general and like game theory and stuff like that. And I think that's the wrong way to think about how we live under a very particular, specific, anomalous historical mode of production that is capitalism, that says like, if housing prices are going down, then we're going to stop investing in housing, right? If housing is getting cheaper, then we got to get away from that as fast as possible. And like, that's a particular irony of the capitalist system. If you can imagine another system where it's like, oh, look, we figured out how to make housing cheaper. Let's put a bunch of money in that. We'll build a ton of cheap houses and we'll have, way too much housing. And then everyone can have two houses. You can imagine a society that makes that choice. But that's not a capitalist society. A capitalist society is going to say, we must stop doing this immediately because it's too easy. And I don't think that's the kind of system we can rely on to house everyone, to feed everyone, right? To clean the environment, to deal with carbon emissions, carbon pollution as it exists, right? And so a system like that is always going to say, what are we going to build? How do we produce the next robot tree that's going to scrub all the carbon out of the atmosphere?
Or how do we make the next bubble, the next AI bubble?
Yeah, the growth, whatever. How do we make growth? How do we make produce something that we need? And it can't think of carbon in the atmosphere as a waste management problem, which is what it is. It's a waste management problem, and it can't think of it that way. It can only think of, what are we going to produce to solve this problem? And that's a problem with the lack of social metabolic thinking, which is a wider problem with a lack of curiosity about how capitalism specifically operates.
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny because it does feel kind of like, I don't know, it feels like dumb thinking. It feels, I mean, it like you were saying, it kind of makes the abundance agenda just sort of like takes capitalism as entrenched, as natural, as sort of like pre-existing. And so we can't change that. There's nothing we can do. So might as well just try to, sort of throw a hissy fit within it. Anyway, Malcolm Harris, fascinating, such good writing. I like that how positive the book is and how clear. And then I want a version that is that is for dumbasses like me.
No, this is everyone needs to. We need to, bring up our levels, right? In this chat
Okay.
GPT world that's trying to dumb us all down. We need
All
to
right. Okay.
rage against the illiteracy of
Okay.
the
All right. Well,
media.
then we need to form book clubs.
Exactly. That's what
Paige said that's what she's doing. So everybody check out What's Left, 3 Paths Through the Planetary Crisis with your book club. So fascinating, Malcolm. Anything else you want to plug? Are you doing talks or a book tour?
I did most of the book tour already, thank God.
Okay, my bad.
But
I
if you're,
got you on the tail end.
it's cool. It's cool. It takes time for people to see about the book these days. But if you're in New York City on Tuesday, June 10th, I'm doing a movie at Film at Lincoln Center called Gree. It's an awesome movie that actually plays a pretty big role in the book.
Oh yeah, you referenced. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
Amazing.
So I get to show the movie at Film at Lincoln Center, which is awesome. But then I'll also be like talking about it and signing books. We'll be doing a podcast episode live of Film Comment Podcast. So go check that out on June 10th. Otherwise, just go pick up the book.
Hell yeah. Thank you so much, Malcolm, for stopping by. I appreciate you, your time, your thoughts, all this.
Thanks for having me.
Take care. Thank you all for being here, for sticking around. Only the best guests. Look at this. When you hear your family, your best guest. I don't know. This is just me tooting the horn of this show and all the awesome people that fun pieces. Fran, get this guy booked on the Majority Report. He's awesome. This guy, Malcolm Harris. He should definitely be on the Majority Report. It's an excellent book, and I think the more people to actually talk about these strategies seriously and have a way to think about them and a framework to think about them, rather than just it feeling like overwhelming. I think that's what Malcolm's speaking to, is this despair because we feel overwhelmed when actually we can sort of digest it and break it down. Robert, thank you for your super chat. The Democrats who are failing us are totally offended. We think they're failing us. And if we didn't just think that, there wouldn't be a problem. Robert, if I could kiss you on the cheek 3 times, I would, because that's exactly the Democrats are so offended people have problems. They're like, I am not a fascist. And wow. And oh God, I wish the bar, you know what? Some of us have a little bit, we raise our bar just a smidge. John Farrell says Chauvin being sent to prison was to placate protesters and reduce the heat on cops. 100%. I mean, if it wasn't for the, the street demonstrations and the amount of pressure, that would not have happened. Angelica C26, it actually wasn't the first coroner. It was an independent coroner's report that said he was murdered. Thank you. Yes, thanks for bringing that receipt, reminding us. Jules T. Health Cox Richardson said that whenever you hear budget, austerity, fraud, our children will inherit this debt, it's code for race, those people getting free stuff and protecting capitalism. Yeah, I mean, in this case, the people getting free stuff, usually it's like, oh, how do we pay for that expansion of Medicaid? How do we pay for that, plan to, do a public works project or the Inflation Reduction Act or the American Rescue Plan or whatever it is. And in this case, it's like, at least they're being consistent around how do we pay for this massive welfare handout to the rich? But I think they're going to come around. Ali Bubble, I don't know why I say Booble. I heard that Republicans are posting AI Floyd memes that say 5 years sober, they're fucking ghouls. No, exactly. Like, this is the kind of cavalier, racist vitriol that we've allowed, right? And again, obviously it has everything to do with the fact that Elon Musk owns Twitter. But the fact that you can get away with saying that George Floyd died of an overdose and this is his fault, when Derek Chauvin is in a prison and they're trying to resuscitate his legacy or his name, it's not on the Republicans. They were always going to be ghouls. It's on Democrats. And you know what? It's also on social movements. It's on us. What did we do? Where did we go? I think we thought that maybe actually our electeds would listen to the streets. They would listen to the people. But then you got Cory Booker out here going fund the police. No, they did. So I think it was also a miscalculation of how much electeds give a fuck about police reform or Black people being murdered and Indigenous people being murdered. Like, truly, it's a huge lesson. It's a huge lesson. And this is an issue that had none of the so-called anti-Semitic baggage around it. Like, oh, and I guess we don't feel comfortable supporting Muslims. That's why we can't speak out around Gaza. No, it's a political win, but not enough. Again, not enough. And so I do feel like we still need to do these postmortems. We still need to learn from these movements. And even talking to Malcolm, I was thinking about the Standing Rock movement. What a moment, what a movement, what an incredible time. A lot of y'all went. And we really did think about this collision between, native value systems of water, air, life, I don't know, and a fucking pipeline. And so it's like, okay, but what happened with that? Who picked up that mantle? Politically, who picked it up? Movement-wise, who picked it up? Nobody. I mean, not nobody. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to, throw a lot of groups under the bus. There's wonderful groups who are still doing incredible work, and they're struggling right now, and they need your support. But I'm saying, just as the unfolding of progress and sort of, politically, it's like, no, nobody really actually ran with that, So it's very disappointing. It's enraging, in fact. Zach Bana says, hi, my originally intended message was blocked due to censorship. It relates to my experience of harm. Like you said, they just sit there and laugh at us, but on my ex, but can't type send the names, 28 posts. Oh, I'm sorry, Zach. I think feel free to email me about that. I apologize. And Rainbow Trainwreck, hell yeah, Seattle. That's what's happening. That is what's happening. And Julie Huttonen on YouTube, I've been canvassing for Zoran in Brooklyn. There's a lot of excitement on the streets. Smear campaign by Whitney Tilson has basically said Zoran is Hamas. So gross. Yes, I saw that. Awful. Rebel K, communism is a way out of everything. Let's go. Late Bloomer 66, I'm so jealous of the members of Frantifa who live in Southern California. Hey, any Bay Area fans who would like to go to the live show this weekend, want to get a road trip together. Oh, you want to come down? Oh, to the Friday show. I was just in the Bay, but yeah, come through. Everyone, pile up in the van. Let's go. It'll be so fun. Friday, don't miss us. Elysian Theater. Tickets are in wherever you're watching this, guys. We got to get the hell out of here. I gotta do the fart song. Do we have anybody to thank? Patrons at $10 or more. We got nobody. But I got some new Substack, folks. So let's go. Let's get it. This is Lay Fart Song. Become a patron at $10 to get this beautiful honorific. I'm gonna shout out right now. New Substack subscribers: Jane Aldiri and Joe Jufre. Thank you so much. Fascist Killa on Twitch, resubscribed. 1 full year with the Frantifa, yes. Itchy Brother Dragon, resubscribed. Thank you. Star 101 Leon, resubscribed as well. Bozo's Bucks for Franny. Mike Boy for Mayor, resubscribed. Says, I have very boring and lame nightmares like Jaws the Revenge. Okay. Flower Drakina, resubscribed also with Prime. Happy to be here with you. Hey, happy to have you. And thank you, any new members. Oh, Rachel Atwood, thank you so much. Remember how hard it was to get Obama to agree to nix the Keystone XL pipeline? That was so exhausting. Yeah. Oh my God. Ridiculous. Thank you also to producer Paige Omek, to Brent Godin, who has been crushing it ever since he arrived on the scene, as well as Andy Vasoyan. We're streaming Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Fridays, 5 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Pacific. It's hot in here. 4 p.m. Eastern. Follow us on all the socials. We're also on Blue Sky, Bituation Room, Bituation Pod on Twitter, if you're still fucking with that. And remember, guys, fight the power, fuck the patriarchy, free Palestine, and don't just bitch about it, be about it. Bye.